Well, I've done a lot with core components and messing around with them. Still haven't quite figured out the centering thing, how I want to do that, but I went ahead and moved forward and did some conclusions, moved past core components. And one of the first ones I did was birth. And I have just been doing the layout. I've also had to re-examine how I'm doing um, uh, data getting in the various core components. And so, I've got child, mother, father, date, and place there. Things scale and nicely and whatnot, and they look nice. I also have name, which wasn't nearly as interesting. But the really nice thing about core components is this. Right now, this entire content in here is managed by these six elements. I have a what in the middle that says birth. I have 3 people, a date, and a place. And to be able to do that and have them manage themselves is so nice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one call to get the birth, which will give me all of the people involved. And then I can go take that and update these components and say, here's your ID if there is one, and here's your data. And then I don't have to go make an individual call, an individual HTTP call for each of the 5 elements. I'm looking, I have to be able to reduce traffic like that. So I have to make each element be able to take in essentially the return of a call or its data, and then be able to pass any subdata onto its components. So technically, I could have on person, I could get all of the conclusions, and then I could say, oh look, I need a birth. Instantiate a birth. Here's your ID, and here's your data. And then that would say, okay, here's my data, and then it would pass on a subset of that data would be the person information. We'd push that down. So just working on that. I've also had to take a step back and think about what I want to do with this. What is the point? Yes, awk is just it's a way to interact with Trepo, and I know what Trepo is. Versioned genealogy database based on a graph that you can interact with. It's open source, but it takes me to Treehub. What do I want Treehub to be? What is the real problem that needs to be solved, and how am I going to solve it? And I think it's something along the lines of you want to do some genealogy, but you have no clue what to do sometimes, and you don't know where to start. You don't necessarily know what you need to do. You've got Ancestry that solves that with a lot of hinting based on records. Family Search right now doesn't really do anything, and it's kind of you got to be able to just be willing to get dirty and do it. It would be nice if you could always know what to do next, if you will, and be able to keep track of it. In school, when I was studying family history and genealogy, everything was done with research logs. You'd say, okay, here's what I'm trying to find. You would create a research log and say, okay, here's the stuff I'm going to look in. Here's what I'm going to do. And then you go through, and then here's what I found. And then you compile that information together, and you just kind of rinse and repeat, do the process, and it's kind of how you did genealogy. I haven't seen a really good way of replicating that online. I've seen some research products, but they're divorced from research logs. They're usually divorced from the actual tree. There's no good integration there, and especially one thing that's glaringly obvious in this industry is there's no real good way of collaborating. You know, if two people are working on the same thing, you would think that they would have a place where they could go and share and be able to say, here's what I think, and here's this, and here's what I've looked at, and all of the research logs and the conclusions they've drawn and the why of those conclusions should just be there in that particular exchange of that collaboration aspect of it. I'm thinking it's something along those lines. So I may end up taking a little bit of time and taking a step back, because I've got, I can continue working on awk and trepo and putting in. I need to go back and put birth into P-tree and be able to do that. But take a step back and say, okay, what should it really be doing? What is Treehub really going to do? And well, trepo and awk are two tools. They're not the end. They're the means to an end. I would love to be able to just create them and let other people create the end, but that you kind of have to strike out and do something first so that other people can see what can be done, and then they can copy it. So that's kind of where I am. Take care.